First contact in the storm. The warning klaxons at Outpost Meridian screamed through the night as Commander Lyra Phoenix stared at her monitors in disbelief. The electromagnetic storm that had been building for days had finally broken, and it was unlike anything humanity had ever recorded. The sky above the Antarctic Research Station burned with ethereal lights, while instruments designed to measure magnetic fluctuations simply shut down, unable to process the readings. "Commander, you need to see this." Lieutenant Riza Delur's voice crackled through the station's internal comm system. His usual calm demeanor was shattered by an edge of excitement that made Lyra's spine tingle. She was already moving, her boots echoing against the metal floors as she made her way to the observation deck. The massive reinforced windows offered an unobstructed view of the polar landscape, normally a pristine white expanse. Tonight, it was transformed into an alien terrain by the storm's otherworldly light. There, Riza pointed, his dark eyes wide. 17 degrees west, about 2 kilometers out. Lyra followed his gesture, squinting through the atmospheric distortion. At first, she saw nothing but the churning storm. But then, a flash of something that didn't belong. A shape that moved against the wind, descending in a controlled but clearly troubled trajectory. "That's not one of ours," she breathed, already reaching for the emergency protocols tablet. Every major nation had signed treaties about testing aircraft over the Antarctic. Whatever this was, it wasn't human-made. The object, ship, her mind supplied, though she could hardly believe it, was losing altitude rapidly. Its surface seemed to ripple with its own internal light, a pale blue-green that pulsed in irregular patterns. As it descended, Lyra could make out more details. It was roughly cylindrical, but with organic-looking protrusions that spiraled along its length, nothing like the sharp angles of human spacecraft. "Station, this is Commander Phoenix. Initialize first contact protocols." Her voice was steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Years of training kicked in, even though this scenario had always seemed like a fantasy during drills. "All personnel to emergency stations. Prepare the all-terrain vehicles." "Commander," Dr. Nadia Volkov's accented voice cut through the comm static. "The storm readings are off the charts. The vehicle's electronics might not survive exposure." Lyra watched as the alien craft's descent became more erratic. "We're not going to let them die out there, Doctor. Get me everything we have that can still run in these conditions. And Nadia, bring your medical kit. All of them." The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. The station's small crew of 12, a mix of scientists and support staff, moved with practiced efficiency despite the unprecedented situation. They'd run first contact drills before, but always as a formality, never expecting. The alien ship crashed 3 kilometers from the outpost, its final descent leaving a trail of scattered debris across the ice. By the time Lyra led the rescue team out into the storm, driving one of the station's 2 remaining functional vehicles, the electromagnetic interference had grown so strong that their compass readings were useless. They navigated by line of sight, following the ethereal glow that still emanated from the crashed vessel. "Remember," Lyra's voice was firm over the short-range radio connecting the 2 rescue vehicles. "We don't know if they're hostile or friendly. Standard quarantine protocols remain in effect. But our primary mission is to save lives, human or otherwise." The crash site was both beautiful and terrifying. The alien ship had broken into 3 main sections, its strange architecture even more apparent up close. The material of its hull seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, and where it was broken, it leaked a luminescent fluid that was already freezing in the Antarctic cold. Lyra approached the largest section first, her environmental suit's heads-up display struggling to maintain function in the electromagnetic storm. Through gaps in the hull, she could see movement. And then, unexpectedly, she heard something. A sound that cut through the howling wind and made her question everything she thought she knew about first contact protocols. It was singing. Not human singing, but something that resonated on frequencies that made her teeth ache and her heart race. It was beautiful and terrible and utterly alien. "Commander," Riza's voice was barely a whisper over the radio. I think they're calling for help." As if in response, a section of the hull suddenly became transparent, revealing the beings inside. They were humanoid in the broadest sense. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But that's where the similarities ended. Their skin seemed to shift colors like an octopus, currently a deep purple that pulsed with internal light. Their eyes, 3 of them arranged in a triangle, fixed on Lyra with an intelligence that was unmistakable. One of them pressed what might have been a hand against the transparent section. The singing changed tone, becoming more urgent, through the storm's interference, through the barrier of alien technology and biology, through all the differences that should have made understanding impossible. Lyra recognized the universal sound of fear. She keyed her radio. "Nadia, bring your team up. And everyone, welcome to First Contact, the bridge between worlds." The next 48 hours at Outpost Meridian redefined everything humanity thought they knew about First Contact. The Luminary, as they called themselves, were a species of scientists and explorers who had been studying Earth from afar for decades. Their lead researcher, Varys, was a being whose very presence seemed to alter the air in the room, her skin constantly shifting through patterns of light that they would later learn formed part of her species' complex language. "Your response was unexpected," Varys told Lyra through the translation device they'd finally managed to calibrate. They sat in the station's main conference room, now converted into a temporary diplomatic center. The storm outside had begun to fade, but its effects still lingered in the form of communication blackouts with the outside world. "How so?" Lyra asked, watching the ripples of cyan and gold that moved across Varys's skin like waves. "Most species, upon finding unknown craft in their territory, respond with military force. You came to help despite significant risk to yourselves." Varys's 3 eyes blinked in their unsettling triangular pattern. It suggests either remarkable compassion or remarkable foolishness. Riza, who had been quietly taking notes at the end of the table, couldn't suppress a short laugh. "Why not both? We humans tend to excel at that combination." The patterns on Varys's skin shifted to deep purple, amusement, they'd learned. "Indeed, your species is difficult to categorize. Our preliminary studies suggested you were too volatile, too divided to be ready for contact. Yet here we are, having a civil conversation after you saved our lives." Lyra leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table. "About that, you still haven't explained what brought your ship into our atmosphere during the worst electromagnetic storm in recorded history." The lights across Varys's skin stilled, turning a deep blue that they hadn't seen before. In the doorway, Dr. Volkov tensed, her medical instincts picking up on the change in their visitor's demeanor. "We were running," Varys said finally. "The storm was not a natural phenomenon. It was created to mask our approach and our pursuers." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Pursuers." Lyra's voice was careful, measured. "There are others among the stars who do not share our belief in peaceful observation. They see emerging species like yours as resources to be harvested." Varys's skin rippled with patterns of black and silver. "We came to warn you, but our pursuit took longer than expected. The storm was our last resort." "Dr. Volkov," Lyra called without taking her eyes off Varys, "please pull up the atmospheric readings from the past week. Specifically, look for any patterns in the electromagnetic disturbances." Nadia was already moving to the main display screen, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The data flowed across the screen in waves of color that, Lyra realized with a start, weren't unlike the patterns on Varys's skin. "There," Riza pointed. "That's not random interference. Those are deliberate pulses, like a search pattern." "They're still looking for us," Varys confirmed. "And they will find us, eventually. The question is, what will humanity do when they come?" Will you trust us enough to let us help you prepare? Lyra felt the weight of the moment settle onto her shoulders. She was just a research station commander, not a diplomat or military strategist. But right now, she was humanity's representative in a conversation that could determine Earth's future. Trust, she said slowly, goes both ways. You're asking us to believe in an alien threat we can't see, based on the word of aliens we've just met. That's a lot to accept on faith. Varys's skin shifted to a pattern they hadn't seen before, intricate spirals of white and deep green. Then perhaps it's time we showed you what we've been protecting you from. Lieutenant Delir, those patterns you noticed in the storm data. They're not just search patterns. They're messages. And if you help me access your communication array, I can show you how to read them. As Riza moved to help Varys, Lyra caught Dr. Volkov's eye across the room. The scientist gave a slight nod, their alien guest's vital signs, which she'd been monitoring since the rescue, showed no signs of deception. Whatever was coming, the threat was real. Commander, Varys called, her voice carrying a new urgency as she studied the data streaming across the screen. There's something else you need to know. The storm that brought us here. It's not dissipating. It's gathering strength. What you're seeing now is just the beginning. Outside the station's windows, as if in response to her words, the Antarctic sky began to pulse with new colors. Colors that had nothing to do with the Aurora Australis and everything to do with what was coming for them all. Hidden truths. The translation matrix that Varys had helped them construct filled the main laboratory's holographic display with cascading symbols. Dr. Volkov stood transfixed, her eyes reflecting the alien script as it decoded the messages hidden within the storm. These are military coordinates, she whispered, her Russian accent thickening with concern. Attack formations. Lyra watched the patterns emerge with growing unease. The Harvester Fleet, as Varys's people called them, wasn't just searching. They were positioning themselves for a full-scale invasion. Earth had less than 72 hours before first contact would become first conflict. There's something else, Riza called from his workstation. He'd been analyzing the Luminary's damaged ship, trying to salvage what he could from its systems. Commander, you need to see this. The data he'd recovered painted a picture that made Lyra's blood run cold. The Luminary hadn't just been studying Earth. They'd been actively interfering with human development for centuries. Subtle nudges in technological advancement, carefully orchestrated discoveries, even certain historical events that had shaped the course of human civilization. You've been manipulating us. Lyra turned to Varys, her voice tight with controlled anger. All this time, you weren't just watching. You were directing our evolution. The alien scientist's skin rippled with patterns of deep indigo. Regret. They'd learned. We were protecting you, guiding you toward the technologies you would need when the Harvesters finally found you. Every species they've encountered that wasn't prepared. Her patterns shifted to absolute darkness, a void that spoke of horrors beyond words. That wasn't your choice to make, Dr. Volkov interjected, her usual clinical detachment cracking. You played God with our entire species. We played gardeners. Another luminary, Talon, spoke up from where he'd been monitoring their ship's salvage communications array. His patterns pulsed with fierce oranges and reds. You were a seed of incredible potential, growing in soil that could either nourish you or poison you. We simply ensured you had the right conditions to flourish. Commander, Riza's voice cut through the tension. There's more. The storm that brought them here, it wasn't just a cover for their escape. It's part of Earth's defensive network, technology the Luminary have been secretly embedding in our atmosphere for decades. We're not helpless against the Harvesters. We have weapons we didn't even know existed. Lyra felt the weight of centuries of hidden history pressing down on her. Every scientific breakthrough, every leap forward that had defined human progress. How much had truly been their own achievement? How much had been carefully orchestrated by these beings who claimed to be their protectors? Show me, she demanded, turning back to Varys. Show me everything. No more secrets, no more manipulation. If we're going to face this threat together, we do it as equals. Varys's skin rippled with patterns they'd never seen before, a complex symphony of colors that spoke of hope, fear, and something that might have been pride. Very well. But understand this. What I'm about to show you will change your understanding of not just your history, but your future. Are you certain you're ready for that knowledge? Humanity has never needed anyone's permission to face the truth. Lyra responded, her voice steady, no matter how difficult it might be. The next few hours became a crash course in the real history of human civilization. The luminaries' holographic records showed moments of intervention stretching back thousands of years, subtle corrections to prevent technological disasters, careful guidance away from paths that would have led to premature extinction, and preparation for the moment humanity would have to face the larger galaxy. But as they delved deeper into the records, something else became clear. The luminaries' interventions had become less necessary over time, as humanity repeatedly demonstrated an uncanny ability to innovate and adapt on their own. Many of their greatest achievements, the things that had most surprised and impressed their hidden watchers, had been entirely their own. That's why we chose Earth, Varys explained, her patterns shifting to a gentle gold. Not because you were easy to guide, but because you constantly defied our predictions. You solved problems in ways we never imagined. You found strength in what we saw as weaknesses. You turned your diversity, your conflicts, your very chaos into sources of creativity and resilience. A sudden alarm cut through the revelation. Talon's patterns flashed urgent crimson. They'd found us. The harvesters. They've decoded our signal. They know we're here. The Antarctic sky outside erupted with new disturbances, the storm taking on patterns that now, terrifyingly, they could read. The harvesters weren't just coming. They were accelerating their attack. Earth's defensive systems, hidden for so long, were about to be put to the ultimate test. Well, Lyra said, straightening her shoulders as she looked at the humans and aliens around her, I guess it's time to show them what humanity can really do, without anyone's help. The patterns across Varys's skin settled into a steady, brilliant blue. No, she corrected. It's time to show them what we can do together, as equals. The coming storm. Time became a blur of desperate preparation at Outpost Meridian. The station's small crew worked alongside their luminary allies, racing to activate Earth's hidden defenses before the harvester fleet arrived. Dr. Volkov's medical bay had been transformed into a command center, its monitors displaying the approaching enemy vessels as ghostly signatures in the storm. The atmospheric defense grid is responding, Riza announced, his fingers dancing across 3 keyboards simultaneously. But there's something wrong with the activation sequence. Varys moved to his side, her skin flickering with patterns of concentration. The grid was designed to recognize both luminary and human biosignatures for activation. It needs both of us, a fail-safe we implemented to prevent either species from using it alone. A bit presumptuous of you, Lyra commented dryly, but she was already moving to help. What do you need? Your hands, Varys explained, her patterns shifting to urgent gold. And your mind. The grid doesn't just read biosignatures, it reads intent. The defensive protocols will only activate if both species truly choose to work together. Outside, the storm had grown to impossible proportions. The electromagnetic interference was so strong that it made the station's lights flicker, and the temperature had dropped to levels that threatened even their best heating systems. But within those same storms lay their salvation, if they could just figure out how to access it. Commander, Talon called from his position at the salvaged luminary communications array. I'm detecting multiple breach points in the upper atmosphere. They're coming through. Lyra turned to Varys, her decision made. Show me what to do. The interface Varys led her to look deceptively simple, a crystalline structure that rose from the floor like a growth of alien coral. As Lyra placed her hands on it, she felt a strange resonance, as if the device was reading not just her physical presence but something deeper. Now, Varys instructed, her own hands joining Lyra's on the crystal. Think about why you're choosing this. Not just the threat. Think about what you're protecting, what humanity means to you. Lyra closed her eyes, letting her mind fill with images. The determined faces of her crew as they worked to save the luminary ship, the way humans throughout history had reached out to help others even at great cost to themselves, the endless creativity and resilience that had defined their species. The crystal began to hum beneath their joined hands, and through her closed eyelids, Lyra could see it starting to glow. "It's working," Reza breathed, watching the monitors. "The defense grid is coming online. But these readings don't match any of the projections." "Because humanity is already exceeding our expectations," Varys replied, her patterns dancing with excitement. "The grid isn't just activating, it's evolving. Your people's capacity for adaptation is affecting the very systems we built to protect you." The station shuddered as the first harvester weapons struck Earth's atmosphere, but where they should have torn through the planetary defenses, they instead encountered something new. A shield that combined luminary technology with humanity's inherent chaos and creativity. "The grid is generating completely new defense patterns," Talon announced, his own skin flickering with astonishment. "They're not following any known protocols. The Harvester's targeting systems can't predict them." Dr. Volkov, who had been analyzing the data streams, suddenly straightened. "These patterns, they're not random. They're following human brainwave patterns. The defense grid isn't just using our biosignatures. It's using the way we think." Of course, Varys's patterns shifted to brilliant white. Revelation. "That's what we never fully understood about humanity. Your greatest strength isn't your technology or your physical capabilities. It's your unpredictability, your ability to find solutions that shouldn't work but somehow do." Another impact rocked the station, but this time it was accompanied by a different kind of tremor. The feeling of power surging through the defense grid as it fully activated. The storm above them was no longer just a storm. It had become a weapon guided by human intuition and powered by luminary technology. "Multiple harvester ships are retreating," Talon reported, his patterns pulsing with fierce joy. "Their weapons can't penetrate the grid's randomized patterns. They've never encountered anything like this." But victory celebrations would have to wait. Even as the first wave of harvesters withdrew, their sensors detected something massive approaching, a vessel that dwarfed all the others. "Their command ship," Varys said quietly, her patterns dimming. "And it's carrying something we've never seen before. Something that could tear apart the very fabric of your atmosphere." Lyra looked at her crew, human and luminary alike, and saw in their faces and patterns the same determination she felt. "Then we'll have to come up with something they've never seen before, too. That's kind of our specialty." The crystal under her hands pulsed in agreement, and for a moment, Lyra could have sworn she felt every human mind on Earth, connected through its network, ready to face whatever came next. The real test was just beginning. Dawn of understanding. The Harvester command ship emerged from the storm like a nightmare made real. Its surface rippled with dark energy that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and its size defied comprehension, easily twice the length of Manhattan Island. "Their weapon is powering up," Talon reported, his patterns a tight spiral of concern. "Energy readings are beyond anything in our database." Dr. Volkov's fingers flew across her console, analyzing the data. "The weapon, it's not just targeting our atmosphere. It's designed to trigger a cascade failure in the defense grid itself. If it succeeds, then humanity loses its best defense." Varys finished, her patterns shifting to deep crimson. "And the Harvesters gain access to a planet's worth of resources and subjects for their experiments." Lyra felt the weight of millions of lives pressing down on her shoulders. The crystal interface beneath her hands hummed with potential energy, connecting her not just to the defense grid, but to something deeper, humanity's collective will to survive, to protect, to overcome. "There's something we haven't tried," she said slowly, an idea forming. "You said the grid responds to human thought patterns, our creativity. What if we stopped trying to use it as just a defense system? Riza looked up from his station, understanding dawning in his eyes. You want to rewrite its basic functions. Use our unpredictability to transform it into something else entirely. The grid wasn't designed for that kind of modification, Varys cautioned, but her patterns showed intrigue rather than dismissal. The energy requirements alone would be exactly what we need, Dr. Volkov interrupted, excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. The harvester weapon is going to release an enormous amount of energy. If we could capture that energy, redirect it through the grid, we could use their own weapon against them. Talon finished, his patterns brightening with possibility. The station shook as the first tendrils of the harvester weapon reached Earth's atmosphere. Alarms blared as sensors detected the beginning of the cascade failure in the defense grid. Everyone, connect to the interface, Lyra commanded. Not just humans, Luminary too. If we're going to rewrite this system, we need all of us thinking together. They gathered around the crystal, human hands and luminary appendages joining together. The interface pulsed with new energy as two species worth of creativity and determination flowed into it. Their weapon is at 70% charge, Reza reported, his free hand still monitoring the sensors. Whatever we're going to do, it needs to happen soon. Lyra closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she felt through the crystal. She could sense the others, her human crew's familiar thought patterns interweaving with the alien but equally brilliant minds of their luminary allies. Don't think about stopping their weapon, she instructed. Think about transformation, about taking something meant for destruction and turning it into something new. The crystal's glow intensified, spreading through the station's floor in patterns that combined geometric precision with organic chaos. Above them, the storm began to change. The defense grid is redistributing itself, Varys announced, her patterns shifting through colors they'd never seen before. It's forming new connections, new patterns that even we never imagined. The harvester weapon fired, its dark energy lancing down through Earth's atmosphere. But instead of triggering a cascade failure, the defense grid caught the energy and began to change it. The storm above them transformed into a swirling vortex of light and power, human chaos theory made manifest through luminary technology. Impossible, Talon whispered, watching as the transformed energy began to flow back toward the harvester fleet. They're trying to disconnect from their weapon, but they can't. Dr. Volkov finished, a note of fierce satisfaction in her voice. Because we're not just reflecting their energy, we're reshaping it into something they don't understand and can't control. The harvester command ship tried to retreat, but it was too late. The transformed energy swept through their fleet like a tide of light, not destroying but changing. Ships that were designed to harvest and destroy found their very functions being rewritten by the combined creativity of two species working as one. When it was over, when the storm finally cleared, the Antarctic sky was filled not with invading warships but with vessels that hung dormant, their weapons transformed into something else entirely. "They're sending a signal," Reza reported, disbelief clear in his voice. "They're asking to talk." Lyra turned to Varys, seeing in the luminary scientist's patterns the same mix of exhaustion and hope that she felt. "Well," she said with a tired smile, "I guess we just proved that humanity really does have a knack for finding unexpected solutions." Varys's patterns shifted to a gentle gold. "You prove more than that. You prove that the greatest discoveries come not from one species working alone, but from different peoples working together. The harvesters sought to conquer through force. You conquered through cooperation and creativity." "So what happens now?" Dr. Volkov asked, looking at the transformed fleet above them. "Now," Lyra said, "we do what humanity has always done best. We adapt, we learn, and we grow. But this time, we do it as part of something bigger than ourselves." The crystal interface gave one final pulse before going quiet, its energy spent but its legacy permanent. Above them, the first rays of Antarctic dawn broke through the clearing sky, illuminating a world forever changed, not by conquest or conflict, but by the simple choice to reach across the divide between species and work together. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been the defense grid or even their unpredictable creativity. It had been their willingness to trust, to cooperate, and to see potential allies where others saw only enemies. And that, perhaps, was the most unexpected solution of all.